Well, alrighty, gang. Welcome back to the Active Self-Protection Podcast. I am yet again your host, Mike Williver, and I remain.
Today's episode is supported by DroneQuote, a veteran-owned business that's a champion for homeowners in the solar and roofing world. These guys are all about honesty, integrity, and doing what's right for the customer. They get you multiple quotes from top installers backed by a 30-year warranty. They even use drones to inspect your roof before and after installation to hold installers accountable. If you value straight answers and want an advocate on your side, don't go solar without DroneQuote, your dedicated homeowner advocates for solar installations nationwide. Hit the link in the description to find out more.
Look at all. Your favorite former Fed with me today, a new friend of mine. His name is Joe. Joe is from the Atlanta, Georgia area. He is a service supervisor with an elevator company. And yeah, I do want to ask questions about that before we get started. And he is married with no kids. Joe, how are you, sir?
I'm great. How about yourself?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for writing in. I'll say it every time. If it weren't for people like Joe, there wouldn't be a show. Someone did leave a comment asking that we do a weekly or bi-weekly Ask Mike Anything. I'm not sure about that. We'll see. I got the comment. We'll see. We'll see if we do that or not. It depends on the questions, I guess. So you are a service supervisor at an elevator company. Is it Otis? That's the only elevator name I know.
No, but it's one of the big four. So
Okay,
you've got
very
Otis,
good.
Schindler, ThyssenKrupp, and Kone.
Okay. Yeah, I've heard of Otis and Schindler. I don't know. The other two don't ring any bells. But so I think a lot of people have sort of elevator questions. They've been on an elevator. Everyone's been on an elevator before. And they wonder about things like, why is it you're not supposed to jump up and down as it comes to a stop? Or what happens if it's a cable style with a pulley? What if that cable breaks? What happens? Do I fall 30 floors to my death, or does something catch me? And then that little door on the top of some elevators looks like an escape hatch. Let's start with that. Is that actually an escape hatch or no?
It is. But you can't actually get to it from the inside. Someone has to get on top of the elevator to unlock it to get you out.
Oh, interesting. Okay. So and they lower a ladder or something? Because it looks pretty high to me. Like I'm 6'1". I don't know if I'd be able to reach that thing.
Well, you would probably, the technician would access it from the floor above and kind of either run the car up. There's an emergency brake release. And here's the funny thing, you're talking about cable snapping and stuff like that. There's actually a counterweight. So if the elevator is not overloaded, if something were to happen where the brakes failed, the elevator would actually go up, not down.
Really?
So you don't crash into the floor, you crash into the ceiling.
Right. So as I kind of understood it, my elevator pitch for elevator brakes is just if it starts to plummet, something sort of pops out of the bottom to break it. Is that close to accurate, or is that really wildly
Correct.
inaccurate?
There's a few different safety systems. One is literally just called safeties. And it basically will grab the rails on either side and provide a friction brake. There's another thing called a governor, where if it starts overspeeding, meaning it's going too fast for what it's rated for, it actually has spring-loaded fins that the centrifugal force of the pulley spinning too fast will open them up, and it will literally just tear it up to stop the elevator.
Wow. All right. And then the last one was you see sometimes, and usually it's like at a resort where there's a lot of kids and there's an elevator. There's a sign, maybe a handwritten sign that says, please do not jump up and down. Is that really a thing? Can you damage the elevator by doing that? And why do people do that in the first place? What's their goal? I don't even understand.
Well, first of all, it's usually kids. Second of all, the way that works, that is really a thing. You can actually shut the elevator down. It won't damage the elevator. But what happens is when you go in an elevator and you see that sign that says weight limit 18 people or whatever, and then it gives you a poundage, there's actually a weight measurement device that's attached to the elevator where if it's too heavy, and it becomes a safety risk, and it will actually shut it down. So if you have a bunch of kids jumping up and down, it can actually, that shock can set off that sensor and shut it off. And now we've got to come out, or the fire department has to come out to let you out of the elevator.
So don't get on the elevator with your bowling ball collection and your baby grand piano. Is that probably good advice?
Exactly.
All right. So last thing, I've been at the federal building, actually, where I worked in San Diego. The elevators were notoriously unreliable, and so were the escalators, by the way. And more than once, I ended up stuck on an elevator and took it upon myself to force the doors open and crawl out. Now, is that advisable or is that a terrible idea? Because what I imagine in my head could happen is, you're between floors, you've got a little space there, you pull the door open, and you start, as you're climbing out, all of a sudden the elevator turns back on and cuts you in half. That's not going to happen, right?
Um, that has happened,
Oh.
and there are now regulations for certain devices that are required on elevators now that basically will not allow the motor to turn to run the elevator up and down if the doors are open, either the car doors or the doors in the hallway, which, by the way, are two different sets of doors. That's why you see the gap in between them when
Hmm.
they open. Um, so, but yeah, the safest place for you in that situation is just stay in there. The technician's going to know how to get you up to the floor and open the doors and all that. And actually, nowadays, I don't know if it was the case when you had this happen, but it's for a normal person now, it's pretty much physically impossible to force those doors open because as they close, there's a latch that comes down. It's called a door restrictor. And you may be able to open it just a little bit, but you're actually fighting a big hunk of metal that's keeping the doors locked.
So what you're saying is, if that was on the elevator when I opened it, I have superhuman strength, right? Like some kind of dang
Sure.
superhero or something. I
Well,
knew it.
and of course, as with most industries, a lot of this stuff is written in blood. You don't get the regulation until someone gets hurt or killed.
Right.
So, that's unfortunate, but there are a lot of different safety things. And I know people are kind of scared of elevators, especially if you're claustrophobic or something like that, but they're actually really safe. There's a lot of levels of fail safe.
Very good. I could talk about elevators all day, but I guess my audience probably wouldn't appreciate that. So we'll move beyond elevator talk. That was fascinating, though. I answered some really good questions. So tell us about yourself, Joe. Are you, aside from your normal occupation, are you a self-defense minded person? I know in your email you kind of gave me a bit of a background on a couple of incidents we're going to talk about in your home, and you were armed and prepared. So I guess you must be someone who's given this some thought.
Yes, sir. So I grew up, my dad was always into guns. He has several cabinets, well, were cabinets, now safes, full of military surplus rifles, Civil War rifles, cap and ball revolvers, all that. He was around when, every military surplus you could think of was in a barrel in the gun shop and cost $50 or whatever. So he bought them all up. And so he would, as a kid, he'd bring them out and show me. I only actually went shooting with him a couple of times before I turned 18 because once I was there, he didn't really make enough money to support still ammunition and going hunting and all that stuff. He was taking care of me. And he worked a swing shift job, so it kind of screwed him up with all that kind of stuff. But once I turned 18, I bought my first rifle. I'd always been into guns. I wanted to have guns and wanted to shoot. I bought a Remington 700, which was at the time when they were garbage, and they still kind of are, I guess. Haven't had any recent, but and ever since then, I at 21, I bought my first handgun. I got my concealed carry license. That was a Walther P99. Kind of a interesting first choice, but I wanted a double action, single action that was a striker fired, and that was pretty much the only one at that time.
Right.
And then from there, I've just built my collection. I go shooting fairly often. I carry just about anywhere I can legally. Even going as so far as to when I travel, if I'm going to a state that I can carry in, I take it with me on the, in my not carry on the
Yeah, don't do that.
locked luggage, and do all that. So yeah.
Very good. My son is currently out in California, going to a theme park, and feels very sad and naked because he cannot bring his gun to California. So, and I don't think if anyone knows, leave me a comment. But I don't think California respects any other state CCW. If that's true or not true, let me know in the comments. I'd love to know that because he might decide to actually go out and get a CCW. We're a constitutional carry state in Arizona, so it's free America. You can carry a gun pretty much wherever, other than
So are we
counties,
here
limited
not too
places.
long ago, but yeah, Georgia is as
Nice.
well.
So your first of the two incidents we're going to talk about, they're both similar. They're both sort of what you perceived at the time to be break-in attempts. Just walk us through the first one. Kind of, what time was it? Where were you? Where was your wife? What were you guys doing? And kind of what gave you the impression there was trouble brewing or possible trouble brewing?
Sure. So I'll just give a quick backstory. We live in a townhouse, so it's 3 floors. The stairs or the stairwells are pretty tall, and our bedrooms are on the 3rd floor, and the living room and kitchen's on the 2nd floor. Only thing on the bottom floor is basically another small bedroom in the garage. So this area, this neighborhood that we live in, basically, if you leave out of the neighborhood and go turn towards the left, it gets pretty scary. You turn to the right, and there's like $1 million fairy tale Snow White houses. So
Okay.
it's kind of that way all over Atlanta. It's little pockets. It's not just like one bad area kind of thing. And for years behind us, we had a set of Section 8 apartments that it was probably just teenagers or whatever, but they'd come over, steal packages, pull on car door handles to see if they were unlocked. And the biggest events that we had were one of our neighbor's cars was actually stolen out of her driveway. And then on Christmas Eve, around, I guess, midnight, there's an actual house on a piece of property next to the neighborhood that there were 10 people home inside. Uh, all the doors were locked. Somehow these burglars got into the garage door, made off with all the Christmas gifts and everything they could take without waking anybody up, stole the car out of the garage, and I don't think they ever found them.